Okay, all right. Good evening, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the ceremonial induction of the 80th General President of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, the premier organization of scientists in Sri Lanka. I kindly request all guests to please take your seats. The ceremonial procession, headed by the drummers, is now heading this way, and I kindly request all guests to please rise from your seats as the procession enters. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the traditional lighting of the oil lamp will take place. And I have the pleasure in inviting the following distinguished persons for this purpose. Professor Kapila C.K. Pereira, Secretary to the Ministry of Education, who is our chief guest this evening. Professor Dhammika Tantrigoda, guest of honor, who is the Chancellor of the Open University of Sri Lanka. Professor Sumedha Jayanetti, the General President of SLAAS for 2021. Professor Janita Liyanage, outgoing General President of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. The General President-elect, Professor Manuj C. Veerasinghe. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo, Professor Chandrika Vijayaratna. The two General Secretaries of SLAAS, Dr. Chintaka De Silva and Dr. Rushan Abegunawardena, and the Treasurer of SLAAS, Dr. Jivanta Premaratna. much indeed. I would now like to invite the chief guest, Professor Kapila C.K. Pereira, our guest of honor, Professor Emeritus Dhammika Tantrigoda, the General President of SLAAS, Professor Sumedha Jayanethty, outgoing General President, Professor Janitha Liyanage, the General President-elect, Professor Manuj C. Veerasinghe, and the two General Secretaries of SLAAS, Dr. Chintaka De Silva and Dr. Rushan Abegunawardena, to please be seated at the head table. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to begin the day's proceedings, let us pay our respects to our motherland. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. And now, to formally deliver the welcome address, I would like to invite Professor Janitha Liyanage, who is the outgoing General President of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. She is the current Vice Chairperson of the University Grants Commission, and I cannot think of a better person than her to welcome you today after a very eventful 2020. Over to you, Madam.
Good evening to all of you. Professor Kapila Pereira, the Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Professor Dhammika Tantrigoda, the Chancellor of the Open University of Sri Lanka, Professor Sumedha Jayanetti, the General President to be inducted, Professor Manuj Krishanta Veerasinghe, General President-elect 2021 of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, past presidents of the SLAAS, council members and members of SLAAS, vice chancellors, deans and colleagues from universities, officials from ministries, presidents and secretaries of professional associations, family members, relations, and friends of Professor Jayanetti, and distinguished invitees. It is my pleasure to welcome you all at this great moment of inducting the General President of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science for the year 2021. Though we have to organize this in a very tedious manner according to the health regulations, I apologize on behalf of the council for not being invited all of our members and everybody, but we have to live with the new normal. So at the onset, on behalf of the Council of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, I welcome Professor Kapila Pereira, the Secretary of the Ministry of Education and the former Vice Chancellor of University of Moratuwa, very warmly to this occasion as the chief guest. The guest of honor, Professor Dhammika Tantrigoda, the Chancellor of the Open University of Sri Lanka and a past General President of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. Sir, you are very warmly welcome in this evening. Professor Sumedha Jayanetti, General President to be elected in this evening, and Professor Manuj Krishanta Veerasinghe, the General President-elect 2021 of SLAAS are welcome. Now may I welcome all past presidents of SLAAS. Your unconditional efforts and dedication for the development of SLAAS are tremendous. So please welcome me to a category from today onwards. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo, Professor Chandrika Vijayaratne, and all the Vice Chancellors of universities, Deans of faculties of Colombo University and all the other universities, and colleagues from universities, you are warmly welcome and appreciate your presence here to tribute to the achievement of one of your colleagues. I welcome the officials of ministries and office bearers of professional associations for accepting our invitation and gracing this event. Then the members of SLAAS and all distinguished invitees are welcome on behalf of the council for being here with us. The family members, relatives, and friends of Professor Jayanetti welcome you all for this event. Your love and support is very much needed to achieve Professor Jayanetti's goals at SLAAS in this year. Professor Sumedha Jayanetti, I wish you a very best for the coming year in the SLAAS and looking forward for a very fruitful year ahead. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam. Ladies and gentlemen, my next pleasant task is to introduce to you our guest of honor, who in turn will introduce the incoming General President. Professor Dhammika Tantrigoda is an emeritus professor of physics of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. He is a present Chancellor of the Open University of Sri Lanka. He is also the principal investigator of the Bengal Fan Satellite Gravity Project of the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs and a co-editor of the Journal of National Science Foundation, Sri Lanka. He received the National Science and Technology Award in 2008 for his research, which revealed useful information needed for claiming the sea area entitled for Sri Lanka under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. He is a former chairman of the National Science and Technology Commission, as well as the Arthur C. Clarke Institute for Modern Technologies. He is a fellow of the National Academy of Science of Sri Lanka and is a proud past general president of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. I humbly call upon Professor Dhammika Tantrigoda to introduce the 80th General President of SLAAS. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for those very nice and kind words of introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Kapila Pereira, Secretary to the Ministry of Education, Higher Education and Skills Development. Professor Sumedha Jayanthi, newly elected General President of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. Past General Presidents, including Professor Janita Aliyanage, General Secretaries and members of the SLAAS Council, SLAAS members who are here, as well as those who are watching us, those who are joining us on the internet platform, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Sumedha Jayanthi and the Council of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science for being kind enough to invite me to participate in this important occasion as the guest of honor. I consider this invitation as an honor as well as privilege that has been conferred upon me. Today is a very important day for all of us who are members of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, as we are going to induct Professor Sumedha Jayanthi, our good friend Professor Sumedha Jayanthi, as the 80th General President of our association. SLAAS is generally considered as the leading learned body or the premier learned society of the country with a proud history and impressive track record. It has a large membership exceeding 5,000 members, ranging from recently passed out graduates to most senior and most respected scientists in the country. Its advice on matters related to science and technology have been well received by successive governments. I thought having an opportunity to give leadership to such an association is an honor, and I strongly believe Professor Sumedha Jayanthi richly deserves to have that honor and richly deserves to enjoy that privilege. So I would like to congratulate Professor Jayanthi for being elected as the 80th General President of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. He will be ceremonially inducted in a short while soon after my speech. Traditionally, in induction ceremonies of past general presidents, the guest of honor is expected to perform an important duty. That is to introduce the distinguished person who will be inducted as the general president to the audience. So today it has become my duty and my responsibility to introduce Professor Jayanthi to this audience. This is a duty that I perform with immense amount of pleasure and satisfaction. Professor Jayanthi had his school education, early school education at Anand Sastrale Matugama and then Ananda College, Colombo, where he excelled not only in studies, but also in many other spheres of activity, including sports and music. With regard to music, he had been a fine SLAAS player, a pastime I thought that is still enjoying, and had actively taken part in competitive athletics at national schools level. Professor Jayanthi entered the University of Colombo in 1979 and read for the special degree in physics under the guidance of leading physics scholars at that time, such as Professor M.L.T. Kannangara, Professor Osman Jayaratne, and Professor T.R. Aryaratne. I often observe that he is a person who loves and respects his teachers very much, and he remembers with gratitude the role played by them, especially those who were at the Physics Department of the Columbia University in molding him as a fine physicist, a scholar, also as an intellectual. Professor Giannetti had his postgraduate training at City University of New York. He carried out most of his research at the prestigious Brookhaven National Laboratory and worked under the guidance of one of the world-renowned synchrotron radiation physicists. In addition to his postgraduate training, he had further foreign exposure and postdoctoral training at several international renowned laboratories, including Argonne National Laboratory, Cornell High Energy Synchrotron Laboratory, and Japan Synchrotron Radiation Research Institute. All these are highly prestigious laboratories and institutions in the world, and having an opportunity to work in such places is a rare learning experience for a physicist, especially for a Sri Lankan physicist. Professor Giannetti was lucky enough to have that experience and have that training. After successfully completing his studies abroad, Professor Giannetti resumed his teaching duties at the University of Colombo as a senior lecturer in physics in 1992. He has been a highly successful teacher who won the admiration of his students and the respect of his colleagues. In addition to his teaching duties, he has also taken a keen interest in research, especially in the field of condensed matter physics, for which he had several years of valuable experience. He joined the condensed matter physics group in Colombo University and continued his research. Later, he started his own research group in sensor physics and was successful in supervising several doctoral level studies and a large number of research papers in prestigious cited journals. This is the time during which I thought he was elevated to the level of professor in the Department of Physics of the Columbia University. Recently, Professor Giannetti stepped into another platform, another pedestal of his academic life, this time as the Dean of the newly established Technology Faculty of the University of Colombo. This has been a difficult task, as there were no long-standing technology faculties in Sri Lanka to learn or from or to emulate. He was successful in establishing a faculty that is having all necessary features that match with present expectation of a technology faculty. More importantly, he flavored its curriculum with certain futuristic ingredients that will well prepare students for the emerging fourth industrial revolution. Professor Giannetti's contribution as a scholar is by no means limited to the University of Colombo, I mean. He has closely worked with University of Grants Commission, Ministry of Education, National Science and Technology Commission, in matters related to quality assurance of higher education sector and in progress reviewing of some of the science and technology institutions in the country. Professor Giannetti has been working very closely with SLAAS since he returned to Sri Lanka after completing his higher studies. He held many important positions of SLAAS, such as the President of Section E1, Chairman of the General Research Committee, in addition to being an active member of many other SLAAS committees, including the Ethics Committee, Board of Trustees, Environmental Committee, Committee on Popularization of Science, CPS, and Education Committee, and of course the Council. His term as the President, Section E1 was an exceptionally good one with many novel activities. I can vividly remember the impressive presidential address that he made as the President of Section E1 at the auditorium of the Open University of Sri Lanka on the topic In Search of Interior of Matter, which was a valuable educational experience to most of us. I am very happy that we have elected a leading scholar with a balanced mind who can face challenges and withstand changing environment as the General President of our association. Such a leadership is needed today, especially in view of the pandemic situation that we are facing. We have just completed one dark year and hope we see the light at the end of the tunnel soon. Our education system, industry, economy and are facing challenges that we have never thought of. Today, the importance of scientific thinking and approach is felt more than at any other time of the history. Learned bodies devoted for science such as ours have a very special responsibility of advising the government, sensitizing the government, especially on matters related to science and technology and allied areas, including education. This and the other responsibilities related to keeping the association alive and active under new normal conditions require creative and mature leadership blended with wisdom. I am sure we can find that creative and mature leadership blended with wisdom in Professor Sumedha Jayanthi. As a past General President, I am very happy that SLAAS is in safe hands. With those words of hope and expectation, I would like to conclude my address, wishing good luck to Professor Jayanthi in his future endeavors as the General President of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, and thanking all of you ladies and gentlemen for your patient listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the highlight of today. You are about to witness the induction of the 80th General President of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. And it is my pleasure to invite the outgoing General President, Professor Janitha Elianage, and the to be inducted General President, Professor Sumedha Jayanthi, for this purpose.
Professor Sumedha Jayanthi, the General Committee of the Association at the last annual meeting elected you to the prestigious post of General President, as you are worthy of holding this post. The association's constitution spells out clearly your functions and your responsibilities. Your ruling shall be final on all matters and points of order that may arise. There are also unwritten rules that you are required to follow. You are the General President for 1 year, but will be a past General President for your life. You have to uphold the dignity of the post and maintain its decorum at all the time. As a scientist and a member of the civil society, you may have commitments in other organizations, but in all such instances, it is your duties to bear in mind the interest and welfare of this association. You are the steward of the country's premier body of scientists, and as such as your performance and achievements will be watched not only by the general membership of this association, but also by the public at large. They will hold you accountable for both the achievements and the failures. What you achieve will go into the books of history of this association. Professor Sumedha Jayanthi, will you perform your duties to the best of your abilities and in the interest of the association?
Thank you. I, Sumedha Jayanthi, pledge that I will uphold the dignity of the office and fulfill my duties as the General President of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science for the year 2021 to the best of my ability and in the interest of the association.
Thank you very much indeed. It is indeed a privilege as well as a pleasure to now call upon the General President of SLAAS, Professor Sumed Jayanetti, for his address, where he would detail to us how he would lead SLAAS in yet another challenging year.
Good evening, everybody. Chief guest, Professor Kapila Pereira, Secretary to Ministry of Education. Guest of honor, Professor Dhammika Tantrigoda. I know that he has to leave the place due to an urgent matter. Outgoing General President of the SLAAS, Professor Janita Liyanage. General President-elect, Professor Manuj Veerasinghe. Past General Presidents of SLAAS, General Secretaries, Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo, Vice Chancellor of the University of Sri Jagannathpura, Director, General National Science Foundation, Chairperson, National Inventors Commission, members of the Council, Deans, Science alumni of the University of Colombo, and my colleagues from the Faculties of Science and Technology, ladies and gentlemen. Just after assuming the leadership of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, a short while ago, I felt the enormity of the responsibility that comes with this office. At the same time, I felt a sense of pride on being elected to serve as the General President of SLAAS. I thank SLAAS and the Council 2019 for having confidence in me to elect me to this prestigious position, a position of high national responsibility. On this special occasion, I think of my parents with gratitude for giving me the wisdom and courage to live a good life as a responsible citizen of Sri Lanka. I wish to thank the chief guest, Professor Kapila Pereira, and the guest of honor, Professor Dhammika Tantrigoda, for accepting my invitation for today's ceremony. I would like to appreciate all the past general presidents with whom I have worked in one way or the other for their presence. I appreciate the presence of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo, Deans of the Faculty of Science, Dean of Faculty of Arts and Faculty of Education. I also appreciate the presence of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Sri Jagannathpura, Director General National Science Foundation, and the Chairperson of the National Inventors Commission, and then the members of the Council. Another group in attendance is the graduates from the Faculty of Science, GSG University of Colombo, who shared those nice times at the Faculty of Science when I was an undergraduate. A group showing an interest to contribute to national development. Appreciate your presence as well. I wish to appreciate the presence of my colleagues and my friends from the Faculty of Science and Faculty of Technology. There is a number of teachers in the schools I went to who have inspired me, and it is too long a list to name them. However, at the time, the Faculty of Science is celebrating its 100-year anniversary, so is the Faculty of Arts, actually. I must thank and think of some teachers who guided me during my undergraduate studies and thereafter. Professor M.L.T. Kannagara, Lakshman Kannagara, that is, Professor Osman Jayaratna, and later Professor R.E. Ratna in physics, and other eminent scholars from chemistry and mathematics, the giants in their own fields. I would like to mention one other name, Steve Heald, who was my PhD supervisor at Brookhaven National Laboratory, New York, a wonderful human being and an exceptional scientist. Finally, I would like to thank my sister, who is not here today, and my wife for the assistance provided to me silently and very patiently, and my son, who has always made us feel happy and is 13 hours west in the international time zone map, probably watching. And now I want to get back to the theme of SLAAS this year. Yeah, no need. I will do it by hand. Right. Okay. Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, founded in 1944 with an act of parliament, has a vision to be a scientifically advanced nation and a mission statement to promote, support, and foster scientific endeavor and technological innovation in an ethical, humane, and sustainable manner for the benefit of the people of Sri Lanka. I don't mean to undermine the words ethical, humane, and sustainable, but I like to underline scientific endeavor and technological innovation, two important terms. Now, science we see as the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. Technology is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. Now, I would like to take one such event that occurs in the natural world first to discuss a few important points in the next few slides, the fire. Now, fire was a natural event that was caused by lightning, volcanoes, and also erupted as bushfires. And the man, having seen the fire and the devastation caused by fire, must have run away early from the fire. But having also experienced the comfort of fire at cold nights, and also having perhaps a burned, cooked animal in the fire, and sensing the taste and also feeling that it was more edible, he must have thought that there should be a way to create fire and also control fire. So as a result, by observation, experience, and experimentation, he found a way to create fire. That is probably one of the first technologies that we have in the humankind. So I just want to show one such tool, one version, that is using two pieces of wood. In one, there is a cavity, and there's a rod. Rod is immersed, and then grinding takes place. And there is a combustible material in the cavity, so it is some hard work. And through grinding, and they basically overcome the friction. They don't know what friction it is probably at that time, overcome the friction and create heat, and then the ignition. So when there are combustible materials and dry leaves at the site, fire can be created. So this is a very beautiful technology. And we see as scientists what is happening here. Now, when we have two pieces of wood and grind one against each other, we have to perform some work. We call it mechanical work. Mechanical work is done to overcome the friction between the two wooden surfaces. At that time, part of the work is created or converted into heat. Heat then ignites the combustible material, causing fire. But the problem with this technique is it is very, very tedious. And we can see two people here trying to create this fire. One is assisting the other person and perhaps also trying to blow away the smoke to allow the clean air to come for the combustion to take place. But this is a very good idea with understanding. Thousands and thousands of years later, the same principle has been applied to make a couple of very, very interesting innovations. One is the matchstick. It's the same principle. Striking a matchstick on the side of a box of matches to create the frictional heat. But it happens in no time, so there is not much of a mechanical work necessary here. But the same principle here. Another one, the lighter. Again, clicking a piece of metal with a firestone to create a spark, and then saturated gasoline vapor basically creates a fire in this case. So there is a wealth of scientific knowledge here. Work, friction, heat, conversion of one form of energy to the other, and so on. Now let's go to the next slide. That is the other side. Now there's a kettle here. Kettle is heated with fire. Kettle is basically given heat, and what happens is the water and the kettle both heat up, and we call that race in internal energy. At the same time, after some time, we can see the lid of the kettle dancing. So what happens is when the heat is given to the kettle, it raises the internal energy as well as it does some work. We can see this very easily with the rice cooker also. Now, when we isolate this system and some conditions are fixed, we see that all the heat provided to the kettle will be spent as the work and raising the internal energy. This is the well-known first law of thermodynamics. So this is a very, very important milestone in science and technology, which set the basis for a very interesting find later on. That is the Otto cycle. The German engineer Otto, learning the first law of thermodynamics, basically introduced the four-stroke spark-ignited internal combustion engine. The theory behind that is an idealized thermodynamic cycle. So that basically shows or demonstrates that a workable engine is possible with a significant efficiency. So that gave rise to the birth of the automobile technology in 1800s. Now, automobile technology started in 1886 in Europe, then came to countries like Japan in early 1900s, then India, 1942, Korea, a late entry, 1955. Those countries have their own innovative ways to develop these industries, especially Japan, added the compactness and beauty and cuteness to these vehicles. So they became a very, very interesting industry. In 1970s, we happened to see these vehicles coming to Sri Lanka, Honda Civics, Toyota KE30s, and so on. Then India also started with this Hindustan motor car, but they went in a different direction later also. What was invented by Japan, the three-wheeler, they accepted, and now the three-wheeler has become one of the biggest markets in India, and Bajaj is the biggest manufacturer of three-wheelers in the entire world. Korea came in 1955, I think about 10 years ago, we don't have much of an interest about Korean vehicles, but now see so many of them in our roads. And they have captured the US market also. So they have their own innovative ways to expand their markets and industries. Now we see we can learn something out of this. Now science basically generate knowledge, understanding the problems, and then an innovator comes in and convert that knowledge into something practical for the practical use. Then through the technology, we can introduce the technology, new technology, or we can produce something through the technologies. Then comes the entrepreneur. Entrepreneur normally take the risks and get involved with developing this and making it available to the masses. So I think these are 4 important steps that we have to think about. And sometimes scientist becomes the innovator and can go all the way and even can become an entrepreneur. Normally, it's not the case in Sri Lanka. Science is conducted in the research labs, and there are some innovations coming from the universities. Then technology is another important part, and entrepreneur takes the biggest financial risk. Now, for example, Pfizer has all these steps. Scientist basically does the research and then innovates a drug or a vaccine. Then the pharmaceutical technologies develop the drug, and then it can be made available to the market. And the innovativeness can come from some other place also. There's no need to be a scientist to become an innovator, somebody who can think new. We call thinking out of the box. Those people can also become good innovators with simple innovations. So this is a very important process in development in science and technology. But what is important is they all have to have awareness. We have to create awareness. By creating an awareness, we can have a culture of innovations. And also between entrepreneur and scientist, there should be, those gaps should be bridged by encouraging research and development. So let me come back to this automobile technology in Sri Lanka to show some highlights. Now, in 1970, well-known entrepreneur Upali Vijayawardena introduced technology to Sri Lanka through Upali Fiat, a joint venture between Upali Fiat and Italian counterpart, and also UMC Mazda, Upali Motor Corporation Mazda, a Japanese one. But it faded away, but this is a period from 1970s to early 2000 that we did not have a good time because Sri Lanka went through a lot of troubled times due to socio-political issues and socio-cultural issues. Then in 1995, microcar came into the market, and with some, I think, difficulties, they were able to capture the market. Now they have a fleet of vehicles, and I think they are expanding to the countries like India and other countries in South Asia. Then another development took place very recently, last year, Vega. 2 engineers from Sri Lankan engineers. One is a software engineer, Dr. Harsha Subasinghe, and then an electrical engineer, Dr. Beshan Gunapala. They invented or innovated this vehicle. Now, this is supposed to be the first all-electric car in the South Asia. So we can see that we Sri Lankans have the entrepreneurial skills as well as innovative skills. Perhaps we don't know the potential that we have. Now, this development, Vega, they are going to produce 25 units, according to the records, next year to the market. And this is a development in the 4th industrial revolution. Now, talking about 4th industrial revolution, let me introduce a few more technologies: agricultural technology, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, environmental technology, food technology, information technology, nanotechnology, and so on. These technologies cut across many scientific disciplines. Now, agricultural technology is not about tractors and combine harvesters. It is about precision agriculture that will reduce resource usage. Then robotics technology, it covers again through many fields, physics, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and computer science. Then biotechnology, same. Nanotechnology, Richard Feynman, the physicist, foresaw the world of nanotechnology in 1960. All these technologies are very important, and they basically form the basis in the fourth industrial revolution. And with these changing technologies, it is important that we look at social sciences and humanities also, another important area. Now, in Sri Lankan universities, we find researchers working in these fields, in all the technologies that I mentioned earlier, and making more and more research publications. And we see them getting more and more grants also. So we have a fairly strong culture of research. What is needed is to convert some of the knowledge into technological innovations. That means we have to create a culture of innovation. That is very, very important. Now, for example, agriculture and environment are some interesting field. In fact, it is ironic to see that the man who created fire had only to worry about the food because he had clean air and clean water. But now we are going to have to drive all these technologies to secure food as well as clean air and clean water. So, culture of innovation is a must for this country to develop. There's another slide that I want to show you. That is, we can see emerging companies or enterprises under various technologies. I won't say that this is a very accurate source because I could not find a proper source. What I did was, I went to the computer and looked for the technologies listed in internet under each category. So that is how I got this information. So I have a small question about the accuracy of this, including IT, information technology. But IT companies, we have a very, very large number. I didn't try to put them here because it will dwarf the rest of the bars here. But we can see so many technologies emerging. Now, can we help each other? That is another question that we have to think about. Can the scientist help the entrepreneur so that we will have a win-win situation, both parties, and then get them to help us to have a culture of research and development. So these are some important things that we have to think about. And also, can we help them to capture the market in the world in these areas? That is also something very important. Now, according to estimates, the value creation potential of the fourth industrial revolution is going to be 3.7 trillion in 2025. So this is a very important area that we have to think about. So I think SLAAS has a role to play under this, in this situation to create awareness among all stakeholders to make an impact on strengthening the culture of innovation and on strengthening the culture of research and development, and also to provide direction for implementation of national science, technology, and innovation policies, and revisit existing policies. This is something that SLAAS must try to do. Why is it that SLAAS should do it? Because SLAAS has a very, very well-structured organization. It has a number of committees that are basically covering all the sectors in relation to science and technology of Sri Lanka. STAC, the Science and Technology Advisory Committee. Then we have a Science Education Committee, Ethics Committee, General Research Committee, Environment Committee, and the CPS, well-known CPS, Committee for the Popularization of Science. And there are 8 sectional committees that cut across all the disciplines in science, including engineering, medicine, and social sciences. So we are a strong organization. Then we have a very large membership. more than 4,000 active members in SLAAS with ranging abilities, because we have a young group as well as very senior influential scientists and researchers. And we have a decent infrastructure also in prime land Colombo. And also thanks to our recent past presidents, we have a new building also. So I consider these as the strengths of SLAAS. Now what I want to do, and I invite our leaders from various sectional committees and other committees to think about these strengths and then think about the weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats that we have. And then plan your activities and sub-activities for this year. I would like to propose a theme for that, that is science and technology for a better tomorrow. Now, I also kindly invite our policymakers, there is a few here, and the senior scientists, and my friends from the corporate world also, to join this endeavor to help SLAAS as well as Sri Lanka. Thank you all very much for listening, and I wish you good health and happy New Year also.
Thank you very much, sir. And let me take this moment to wish you the very best as you spearhead the activities of SLAAS in 2021. And now, ladies and gentlemen, my next pleasant task is to introduce the chief guest today. Professor Kapila C.K. Pereira served as the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Moratuwa and went on to become its Vice Chancellor in 2017. We all know that he is currently the Secretary to the Ministry of Education. I call upon Professor Kapila C.K. Pereira to deliver his address at the ceremonial induction of the 80th General President of SLAAS.
Very good evening, everyone. Vanakkam. Assalamualaikum. Newly inducted President, Professor Sumedha Jayanthi of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Sciences, the outgoing President, Professor Janita Liyanage, and all the distinguished dignitaries at the head table, the Vice Chancellors of the universities, Deans of the faculties, Madam Mrs. Jayanthi, and all the past presidents, the members of SLAAS, distinguished invitees. I am honored and privileged to stand here and being invited as the chief guest for this very important event where the organization has begun in 1944, I believe, which is one of the oldest professional associations and which is very important associations. And for all of us who are gathered here today, and which drives from the discovery of fire, where we are on the edge of or eve of being stepped into the 4IR, or the Fourth Industrial Revolution. First of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to Senior Professor of Physics and Dean of the Faculty of Technology, University of Colombo, Sumedha Jayanetti, who was just inducted as the General President of the Sri Lanka Association of the Advancement Sciences for the year 2021, or SLAAS 2021. Today, I would like to play a different role, where I would like to see the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Sciences through the eyes of the Secretary of Ministry of Education. I believe that is what is fitting me this evening. I will not take long, but I would like to see what the Ministry of Education and the SLAAS can do for this country, where there is a science education committee, the second one in the list, where the newly inducted president mentioned. Over the past few years, the science branch of the Ministry of Education and Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, or SLAAS, have been working very supportively and collaboratively for the enhancement of science education in Sri Lanka. I am aware that under the leadership of Professor Chandana Jayaratna, over thousands of teachers all over the country has been trained on creativity and new innovations under STEM education. Thereafter, Professor Preeti Udugama continued to do the same and assisted in the creation of the STEM clubs in schools. Although the pandemic situation in the country has interrupted the continuous work during the last year, I am also aware that the outgoing president, Professor Janita Liyanage, who presided over the event, also has taken special initiatives to integrate and establish new innovations and research culture in our school system, where we all have come through. Some people may have a lot of criticism about our school system, but we must not forget this is the wealth of our country, and this is the most precious treasure that everybody can think of. We don't see the value of this one because we tend to forget what we see every day. And there is a singular saying, I will not mention that one for that reason. It is noteworthy that the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Sciences and the Ministry of Education have been very supportive over the past few years. We have worked very closely each other. In such situations, I consider it as a privilege, once again, to participate and share a few of my thoughts as the Secretary of the Ministry of Education, which is vested with huge responsibility in the history of Sri Lanka, where it has everything that you want to think of, from the womb of a mother to the birth of a child, early childhood education to preschool education, to general education, to higher education, to skills and innovation and technology and research. Then Daham Pasals and Pirivanas, and more importantly, education reforms. This is no joke, and country expects a lot from Ministry of Education. Having digested this fact, we all need to work together because, as you all know, the world is moving from the third industrial revolution, or you want to call it digital technology, to the fourth industrial revolution, the fourth IR. technological revolution is something that we should not limit to words. As scientists, technologists and engineers, we have huge roles to play. We also have talked about a world in which the knowledge explosion taking place very rapidly and new knowledge is generated, and in certain areas within a fraction of a second these changes in knowledge takes place. Sometimes you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, you found new knowledge. You wake up with new knowledge. That is what a technology can do. Hence, knowledge-based economy has been under conversation in the last few decades. But now we are entering into an expanding technological advances in the world. The so-called technological revolution is the transformation of one technology into new technology in a very short period of time. If simply says, new innovations are being taking place very rapidly. Therefore, further knowledge will have to be developed to talk about an innovation-based economy in the dimensions of knowledge-based economy. That is the true picture or the true shape or true meaning of a technological revolution. I doubt whether we are already lagging behind in taking up these initiatives. Sometimes I wonder. You being the present Dean of the Faculty of Technology, Professor Liyanage being the current Vice Chancellor and the former Dean of the Faculty of Technology, when the technology faculties or the technology streams were introduced into Sri Lanka, we were 20 years lagging behind. 20 years. So we can't wait. We have to grab every opportunity or challenge that comes in our way. Also, it can be seen that the speed in which technological revolution has taken place is being accelerated through the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope, as the pioneers of science education in Sri Lanka, that all of you have already paid your special attention in this regard. Also, the Dean of the Faculty of Technology, you, sir, I see it as a very encouraging sign that this will be a more sensitive matter to our newly inducted president. In this age of transformation, as a country, it is very important to consider how we could upgrade our future generations to face future challenges. There are the challenge of taking science education to the next generation is one of the most challenging in the current situation, and we had to come up with new ideas. We have to, and we had to, and we will have to come in the future. It is predicted that more than 60% of the future job market will be bound around science, mathematics, and technology. It is estimated that about half of the current jobs will not be there by 2030. Half of the present jobs. The role of the modern physician or the doctor, the current Vice Chancellor of the Colombo University being a physician and a doctor, is being transformed into a remote system focusing on robo-physicians who direct with artificial intelligence. So that is the name of the game, the buzzword today. Doctors will have to find new ways and means of treating patients, telemedicine, and diagnosing with online or remote systems with the COVID. Yet, we have been successful. Technology has come to fill the gap created by personal distance. Therefore, many new jobs are being created in the name of technology. In this situation, you may wonder if we are able to upgrade our human resources for future challenges, because it is challenging. Therefore, we will have to think again and again to motivate and increase the students' attraction towards science, maths, and technology fields. We have established the technology stream and technology faculties with the sole intention of reducing the percentage of social sciences and humanities from 51 down to 20s. But when I saw 2 weeks or 1 month back, it has grown up from 51 to 54, whereas the technology stream students have eaten up to science and math streams. But we need to find some answers. Otherwise, we cannot face this fourth industrial revolution challenges. I hope the SLAAS could do a great job with us in this regard. It is obvious that if we could inculcate innovation and research culture among school children and train students in the innovation and research, we could easily attract more students towards science and technological fields. That is all in our hands. If you look at, now if you observe the simplest way the newly inducted president introduced the most fascinating discovery of fire, and then the application of this fire, the discovery of fire, into the most pet subject of any young child, to the fierce, to the micros, to the vega. So that's how you must make this science more fascinating for the children. So it's in our hands, the most educated and the most lucrative people in this country, the minority which benefited from the free education. We must not forget the past. The newly inducted president, having hailed from Ananda Sastralaya Matukuma to Ananda, to New York, to Chicago, to Japan, to all over the world, and come here, occupying this one, where your son is witnessing from Arizona or somewhere in the world. These are stories, fascinating stories, where we bump into each other as scientists, and then we accumulate this wealth of knowledge, share knowledge. That is why this SLAAS is for. You need to create a dialogue. You have a theme for this year. So this is for the benefit of students, where we need to nurture students to make science interesting, maths interesting. Technology anyway is interesting. It would be very timely and highly appreciated if the SLAAS could continue to provide leadership for this in the future too. As I see, one of the biggest problems in science education today is the teaching of science not as science. Teaching science not as science. If you take the grade 6 textbook, and if you witness Guru Gedara, Itaksalawa, you will have many, many critics. So please help us, the Ministry of Education, to make this teaching more attractive, a pleasant journey for a grade 6 student, grade 7 student, and from grade 6 to grade 11. After that, they will be on their own. Like Professor Sonnadaras, Professor Chandana Jayaratnas, they will have their own fascinating ways. Only thing is, you need to guide them to the edge of the cliff, so they will decide whether to jump off the cliff or do a 360, or just run away, run back from the edge of the cliff, or just fly. Create a way to make this edge of the cliff and then come up with innovation right then and there, instantly come up with this moving forward at the edge of the cliff in most innovative fashion. As a result of it, the students lack the abilities of solving skills, research ability, and ability to testify and explain. Those are very essential in proper science education. Hence, along with the students, we also should pay special attention to science teachers, and upgrade their innovative and research skills and improve their method of teaching. That is how the SLAAS, member of the SLAAS, can help Ministry of Education. He mentioned think out of the box. You must train our teachers and students to think out of the box. If you just pause for a moment and think about the grade 5 scholarship results this year, it's not that I'm here to boast about 10 students got 200, that is, leave alone that. But fact of the matter is that if you see the results, the average is 89.9, highest ever in the history. It is because students were compelled to study on their own in their homes. Just see the cross-section of the students who got the highest, from Polonnaro to Ambilipitiya to Bandaragama to Zahira to those places. So this is what COVID can do. Let's wait and see. You will be, I'm sure the scientists will be waiting to analyze now the A-level results. And even more so, O-level results. Because we have been able to conduct the schools in the year 2020 out of 294 days, only 90 days, 94 days. Primary schools only 67 days. So by upgrading teachers, we could easily touch the students in more innovative ways. Therefore, I strongly believe that the Ministry of Education and the SLAAS have a great deal to do, and we can do together. As you all know, at present more than 188 countries all over the world and more than 1.6 billion students have lost their schooling. 188 countries and 1.6 billion students have lost their schooling due to COVID-19 pandemic situation. And Sri Lanka, too, students are out of schools for nearly 6 months. Although various steps have been taken to overcome and minimize the loss of schooling to students in their studies, still students feel it very stressful to be at home without social interactions. Imagine what kind of future generations we will be churning out if we continue to lock them in our homes without sending them to schools, giving them an opportunity to interact with their peers, share their ideas, come out of online this thing. So these are huge responsibilities and challenges which I have with their peers and teachers. Therefore, I have a huge challenge of reopening the schools with all the safety precautions. With all your support, we have had 51% of the students turning out yesterday in all 8 districts. This 51% is because 37% in each of North and East, where North, you know the situation these days, otherwise it's very high. In East, 32 schools had to be closed. In Kattankuti to down, 240 kilometers there. And 47% in North Central because of the rain. Over 71% and all the other provinces more than 63%. Which is what collectively as a society which understands, comprehends, and take all precautions and responsibility to ensure your own child's safety, and more importantly, if even one child came to student, 88% of the teachers were ready and present in the schools. Some places is high as 90s. Today is also improving. 47% yesterday in North Central, today is 54. So only in Matharagol, Kurunagal and the towns is low. You go to Passara, close to 90. You go to Teldenia, it's very high. Where remote areas, it's very high. But anyway, challenges are blessings. You need to find new ways. You need to be positive. You can't take a back seat and wait things to fall in place and happen, because you can't play with the education. Just like the thermodynamics he mentioned, the conservation of mass and the momentum and conservation of energy, the time, the education, you cannot put back. Therefore, at this stage of the challenge, it is very important to look at the future science education in Sri Lanka in a different angle or different angles, and initiate more attractive programs to attract more students towards science education. So that's what your number 2 committee. Finally, I would like to end my speech by congratulating once again Senior Professor Sumedha Jayanethni, who was newly inducted, and also like to invite all members of SLAAS to work with Ministry of Education for the betterment of science education in Sri Lanka. Thank you, Nandri, and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you very much, sir, especially for inviting SLAAS to help the Ministry of Education, and I can assure you that SLAAS is more than willing to join hands with you. I would now like to invite Professor Sumedha Jayanethni, the General President of SLAAS, to present tokens of our appreciation to our chief guest today, as well as our guest of honor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm also delighted to announce that the Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo will be proposing the toast later tonight, and you are kindly requested to save your drinks for that purpose. Thank you very much. However, before we conclude the formal proceedings for this evening, I had the pleasure of inviting Professor Manuj C. Veerasinghe, General President-elect of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Teshini. And today I have been vested in delivering the vote of thanks. Professor Kapila Pereira, our chief guest, Secretary to the Ministry of Education, thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and for your inspiring words today, and inviting us, SLAAS, to work with Education, Ministry of Education in the future too, which I think the SLAAS would welcome, and we will do same. Professor Dhammika Tantirigoda, Chancellor of the Open University of Sri Lanka, thank you, sir, for gracing today's occasion. And I would like to thank all our past presidents of SLAAS and the council and others who came and participated today to this great occasion. We have many vice chancellors, deans, representing the university sector, which is part and parcel of SLAAS from almost from its beginning. Thank you, madam, thank you, sirs, for being with us today. And there are many other invitees with us who took their busy schedules out and came to us to support us in this induction ceremony of the President, General President 2021. We have several of sponsors who made it possible to have this occasion and also try to support us for the rest of the year. If I mention in name, GSG University of Colombo, S&D Chemical Associates, Analytical Instruments, Petrochem, and Excel Worldwide, who have been generous in supporting SLAAS for this event and for rest of the year. I have to thank the Watersage management and the staff for providing all the support to have this ceremony a success. And there are many others behind doors who have supported us to make this ceremony a success today, and many others who have been trying to support us and been supporting us throughout for the last 78 years. So thank you for all of you, and we have I hope that you will join us with the rest of the day's proceedings, with the reception, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Veerasinghe. The ceremonial induction is now formally concluded, and I kindly request members of the head table to please be seated with the audience. There's a table here especially for you. I think you could head over here. Although the formal part of the proceedings is now officially over, let us now change gears and join in fellowship. And to help us to do that, I now call upon Professor Chandrika N. Vijayaratna, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Colombo, to propose the toast in order of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science.
Chief guest, past presidents, including the immediate past president, the newly inducted president, sectional presidents, fellow members of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. Nothing in science has any value to society if it is not communicated. And indeed, our local scientists have demonstrated over the years this social obligation. Well over 75 years ago, through this esteemed organization, the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. I stand before you representing the very institution that nurtured the 80th president of SLAAS, and that is the University of Colombo. We are certainly not presumptuous to claim that many of the visionaries, founders, and the very pillars of SLAAS have emerged from or were affiliated to the University of Colombo. And I'm happy that this university makes a substantial contribution to SLAAS, at least overtly, in terms of leadership. When I studied the lengthy list of general presidents over the past few decades, it was not surprising to find that at least 2 or 3 of every 5 successive presidents of this association, that is 40 to 60%, belong to the University of Colombo. When trying to determine the underlying reason or reasons, I faced a dilemma. Was it their maturity,
Was it the scientific outlook, area of expertise, leadership skills, track record, or the geographic locality? I wondered whether the underlying cause or causes was strictly scientific. I then decided to have our new president as the case study. Without doubt, he is mature, and having known him from the time he was in shorts, you can appreciate how young he is. Without doubt, he is honest, capable, and a great scientist. He is one of the best of our university and a scientist par excellence. And above all, he's a committed member of this association. So my concluding hypothesis is that SLAAS and the University of Colombo are so well intertwined as institutions through history, processes, and the common quest in seeking the truth. It is indeed serendipitous that the faculties of science and arts of our university celebrate a century on the 21st of this month, just 20 years behind SLAAS, and possibly the closest chronologically. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the University of Colombo, I request you to rise to toast the Sri Lanka Association for the advancement of science. May SLAAS grow from strength to strength and remain the beacon of light in Sri Lanka for scientific discovery and discourse. In the words of the philosopher John Dewey, every great advance in science has issued from a mere audacity of imagination. And his contemporary Albert Einstein, the whole of science is nothing more than a refinement in thinking. So to SLAAS, thank you, and stay safe, and keep imagining. Islam. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much for that delightful toast, madam. And I hope that you will enjoy the rest of the evening along with the scrumptious dinner served. Thank you very much indeed for your presence, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you.